have enough confidence to remind yourself that this isn't the end game, right? Take that screenshot of the negative bank account, right? Take that screenshot of your belly hanging over your belly, right? Because number one, you want to have that proof that I knew this wasn't where my story ended, right? And a reminder of where you're going. And sometimes it's just a hard reminder, right? Because sometimes, motivation is a lot like bathing, right? Like it doesn't last, so you have to do it often. Yeah. And so sometimes you have to have that reminder, like, yo, I can't be sitting on my butt. I got stuff to do, right? So like, it amazes me the amount of people that just like be twiddling their thumbs. Like, bro, like what more motivation do you need?
Get around those obstacles and make room to create opportunities. You are listening to the Around the Way podcast. And now, your hosts, Kyle King and Kiana Williams.
Welcome to another episode of Around the Way podcast, where we help you get around your obstacles and find a way to redesign your life. We are here. Look, we are here with the GOAT, the number one financial guru in America, my brother, my man, my mentor, the myth, the legend, the Michael Jordan of the financial industry. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, man, happy to be here. That's quite the intro, so I guess I got to live up to it on this podcast.
Nah, I already know you will, bro. So before we even get started, could you talk about just who you are, how you're impacting lives, and just all the great things that I know?
Yeah. So I am George Achaempong. I am a native resident of Charlotte, North Carolina. Been here pretty much my whole life. I have been in the financial industry for over a decade. And I've been helping people in a lot of ways, right? Number one, through really helping them decouple the way that they make money from their time, right? Because oftentimes we think that we have to trade money for $1, and that's just not true. Because when you do that, now you free yourself up to really live your life, right? So I coined this phrase called the sleeping bag society, right? Helping people make money while they sleep. But more than that, my goals intrinsically are to help people feel more free, help people be more happy, help people really break those generational curses that are associated with finance, right? It's much more than the fancy car, the fancy house. So it's much more about using that fuel to impact your family and live your best life. So, yeah.
Man, I love it. And anybody that's listening right now, I get really excited when, I bring people on and we start talking. But I feel like out of all the podcasts that we've done, this is definitely, and Kiana, you probably can attest to this, this is definitely my favorite. And the one that I'm most excited about, like George, he texted me the other day. Well, I was texting him. I was like, bro, like, can you come on the podcast? And then we confirmed the time.
Yeah.
And I literally went at that moment and created the calendar. He was like, damn, that was quick.
Because I live and die by my calendar. So if it's on my calendar, I'm going to be there. You can literally the calendar, right?
It was happening right then and there.
Before you change your mind.
Yeah, like, and
I'm excited to be here.
I feel like a lot of people, right? A lot of people see, our success, right? A lot of people have, talked about, we see your growth and all these different things, but they don't see the people behind why you've grown. So it's a beautiful thing. And I feel like this is kind of like a long time coming, right? That we've been able to share platforms, me coming on your podcast, you coming on here, and, you've contributed to like 88% of like where I'm at from a financial sense, from an intrinsic value, from an integrity character perspective. So just kind of first question for you, bro, is why is it important for you to be a man of integrity and a man of character?
Yeah, that's big, man. Number one is one of the biggest causes of stress is lack of alignment, right? It's like you're trying to paint this picture of yourself, but inside there's a totally different thing. So it's this war, right? You're constantly at war with yourself. And it's impossible to grow and show up authentically if you don't have integrity, right? Because you're literally contradicting yourself with every move. And with that contradiction, it diminishes your confidence, right? Because if internally it's like, this is who I actually am, but outwardly I'm painting this image, it's going to create this conflict, which diminishes your confidence, which ultimately means you're just not going to be able to show up who in the most authentic way. And so for me, on a fundamental level, integrity just makes sense, right? It's like if I don't show up as who I am authentically, it's going to put a strain on my ability to be the best version of myself, right? So if nothing else, that's why integrity makes sense. Beyond that, integrity is very important to me because at the end of the day, like I want to be the same person behind the scenes as I portray, to the front of the world, right? Because it's easy, right? It's like I don't have to remember what I told Kyle, 3 months ago when I see him again, because it's going to be the same thing because it's true, right? And so people think it's this esoteric answer, but quite frankly, fundamentally, having integrity just makes your life a lot more easy, right? You don't have to finesse or figure out what you said to this person, or like, dang, I said this in this business deal to get this client, but now I gotta make sure, because now they're in the same room, and hopefully, it's just too much. It's too much mental gymnastics, and so I just want to be who I say I am 100% of the time.
Man, I love that, and I think a lot of times it's like oversaid because I feel like people don't really define it. What does the best version of yourself look like?
The best version of myself, I would say the best version of myself looks like, I have this thing called a champions checklist. I don't know not sure if I shared it with you. Right?
Yeah.
And so essentially it's me showing up for myself on a daily basis in 100% alignment of what I said I was going to be and who I said I was going to become. Right. So that might look like prioritizing my health and fitness. Right. Because who am I to coach you and tell you what to do? But then I'm not even coaching myself. So many people want to coach everybody else, and they can't even coach themselves.
Facts.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like I want to. So to me, ultimate self-awareness and self-control and discipline looks like greatness to me, because what that means is I am in control of myself, and if I'm in control of myself, I can steer the ship. And if I can steer the ship, I can go wherever I want to go. So many people are being led and pulled in so many different directions that they can't even extract the value out of themselves that they want. So for me, again, not to oversimplify it, but it's having a level of self-control over myself that allows me to do what I want to do. It sounds simple, but how many times have people, right, had this ambitious schedule, ambitious calendar, ambitious goals, and then it gets moved from one day to the next day, then 1 week to the next week, then 1 month to the next month, then 1 month to the next year. You see what I'm saying? And so what does that tell you? That tells you don't have self-control, right? You're the one who set out this schedule, set out this intention, set out this plan, but it's not happening. Why? Because something else is pulling you. You don't have the power to say no. You don't know when to lean into what you're supposed to do. And so for me, if I can just have self-control and coach myself, that's what success looks like to me.
Talk to me a little bit about the champions checklist. Now, I see it in my head once you sent it, but talk to everybody on the audience. Like, what are a few things on that checklist?
Yeah, absolutely. So I bucket it into the main categories of my life, right? And so health and wellness is a category, financial is a category, business is a category, family and relationship is a category, and then spirituality and I guess you would say mindset is a category. So in those categories, I have subcategories, right? So on the champions checklist, it looks like every day I read 10 pages. Every day I'm physically active for at least 45 minutes. And the key thing about the champions checklist is it's binary, right? It's yes or no. There's no ambiguity. It's no like, well, I was busy today.
I did 9 pages.
Right. You know what I'm saying? It's very, very binary. And what I like about it is that I often tell people, like, there is a recipe to success, right? But it's not about being attached to the outcome. It's being attached to the ingredients and the process that it takes to make that. You see what I'm saying? Because here's the thing. If you get a recipe for fried chicken, right, and you follow the recipe, you can all but guarantee the fried chicken's going to come out tasty as hell.
Nah,
you see what I'm saying? But so many people are just worried about don't worry about the outcome. So what the champions checklist allows me to do is it allows me to focus on the very small tactics. And I know if I just show up for those consistently, if I check those boxes, it's all but impossible to hit my goals. So I don't have to worry about hitting $1 million or 6 figures, whatever your goal is. I just got to get in front I got to know what the ingredients are. And if I have those ingredients and I check those boxes every single day, it's almost impossible not to hit the target.
One thing that you taught me years ago that I really stick to, man, and it's kind of like from the same concept of the book, The One Thing, is one thing that you said is like, we all have these big audacious goals. That's exactly how you said it, quote. But we have to focus on the little things before we actually get to the big things. Like before you can, make $100,000 in a year, just reverse engineer that. Like, how much money do I need to make today? So can you talk about this concept and this reality of being successful in the small steps?
100%, right? And so to piggyback off what I just said, it's like, to Kyle's point, with $100,000 is everybody's sweet spot, right? Was that 274, 273 a day, right? That is your target, right? So the best way to eat an elephant is one piece at a time, right? So when we think about our goals, it's like, okay, let me zoom out, understand like what it takes to achieve it, and then just take those micro incremental steps to get there. So I use the analogy, you're an author, right? So I use the analogy of a book. People always, I don't have time to read. I don't have time to read. I got so much going on. I'm like, okay, well, do you have time to read 2 pages every hour that you're awake? Rain, sleet, or snow? If you do the math on that, let's say you're awake for 16 hours, it's 32 pages a day. Multiply that by 7. On average, you'll read a 200 plus page book every week. Right?
I didn't even put it in that perspective.
So it's like finding the window, finding the small, like instead of like these big time blocks, because that's what gets people off, right? They're like, oh, I got this hour and a half, I'm gonna lock in. Then some life happens, and it's like, oh, I don't have an hour and a half anymore, so let me move this hour and a half again. Versus if it's like, I got 5 minutes, right? And that 5 minutes will compound, and it definitely transcends in every category, especially personal finance, right? So it's like, we'll spend the $5 on Chick-fil-A, $5 on McDonald's if you eat that crap. $10 on whatever. And then at the end of the month, we're like, dang, how did I spend 6, 7? And Kyle, you know, how did I spend
Kyle, you know.
$600-$700 on food? And so we can connect the dots, right? That those little incremental transactions added up to something big. But on the inverse, if I say, hey, just save $5 a day, people are like, man, that ain't gonna do nothing. You see what I'm saying? So it's like when it comes to things that impact us in a negative way, people can't connect the dots, right? Or they can connect the dots on how much of an impact it is. But when I tell you the same thing, to start small from a progress perspective, no one thinks it's going to have enough impact, right? So that's the challenge. You got to reverse engineer the same logic. So the same way that $5 to $10 a day can add up to $600+ a month, and eating out, you're like, dang, where'd the money go? Is the same way that it can add up for your good. You just have to change your bad habits to good habits.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I like what you just said about us not recognizing the small things that we do that could potentially create positive outcomes.
Yeah.
What's a small decision that you made at the time? It seems small,
Yeah.
but that it has created the largest positive impact that you didn't anticipate?
That's a phenomenal question. I'm going to go abstract on this one. So I have an e-commerce brand called Melanin Money, right? And this was 2016. I just had a spinal surgery. Couldn't sleep in the bed, was laying in the recliner. And I had this idea. I was like, man, like, what if I could create these walking affirmations to inspire people, right? And so I started brainstorming, jotting down some ideas. And I came up with the slogan, Black Brilliant Billionaire in the Making. At this point, again, I'm a finance guy. I'm creative. I'm relatively stylish. But I don't know anything about creating merch, right?
Yeah.
So hadn't even connected with a graphic designer at this point. So I went on Fiverr.com. Shout out Fiverr.com. Sponsor this podcast.
Right?
And I found someone. I was like, yo, I just need this t-shirt. I need this design. Cost me $20, right? That shirt has made me multiple 6 figures.
Wow.
Right? From a t-shirt. You know what I'm saying? And it cost me $20, and I was just sitting there doodling at the time. And so I say that to say, I knew nothing about that lane, but I took incremental steps, right? And then it transited into something bigger than I could possibly think of. To the point of, before we were on this podcast, I was asking Kyle, hey, is there an office space in here that we can potentially use for warehouse space, right? Because now the brand is just growing exponentially. And so I say that to say that you don't have to know everything. All you have to do is be willing to take a small incremental step. And as you take that step, you're going to get a little bit closer to seeing what you need to make that next step. Oftentimes, we want to see 1,000 feet ahead of us in order for us to make one step.
Yeah.
No, all you need to see is one foot ahead of you, right? And it goes back to what Kyle said about asking about the small steps. And that's what it's about. It's, can I just take one before I know everything? And then once I make that one, will I see something new that will reveal enough for me to make the second and the third and the fourth? And then the next thing you know, you've walked a mile.
So you talk about, the catalyst for Melanin Money was wanting walking affirmations. What was the affirmation that you frequently told yourself that got you through whatever because I'm assuming to come to that realization that this is a need, it was a problem that you acknowledged was maybe something that resonated with you. Yeah. So what was that situation? And then what was the affirmation that you told yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll actually take it back to that same season. So I'm very big into health and fitness. And the reason being is because how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? And so it's like, if you can't prioritize your health, then how can you possibly prioritize anything else, right? And so in that season, when I was kind of down and out, if you will, I remember I literally was in the best shape of my life because I was getting married that year. And then a couple months after I had the surgery, And then like I just literally watched myself fade away, right? I lost like 35 pounds, not the good kind of 35 pounds. I'm talking about like I went down to frail, like you probably wouldn't even recognize me if you saw the picture, right? And a lot of what I realized is a lot of my identity was wrapped up into my self-image, right? Which was so a lot of self-work had to happen in that season because I didn't recognize the physical version of myself, and so I was in this very vulnerable place of like, well, who am I, right? Because I didn't recognize myself physically, and so at that time, what I did was I was like, man, I need to find ways to lift myself up, right? I need to find ways to get myself out of this headspace. This is coming from someone even back then, because I was only we're 21, 2015. So it's not that long ago. So I'm still the guy that people, know that I am, but I was forgetting who I was. You know what I'm saying? That was actually the first year I bought a firearm because I'm a trained martial artist. And for the first time in my life, I felt like if somebody pulled up on me, like, they gonna get me. You know what I'm saying? I know it sounds silly, but think about that. The level of confidence that comes from just walking, knowing that, again, not like arrogantly, but being a trained martial artist, like you have no fear in your heart, right? To go from that to looking completely different physically, feeling frail, fragile, having to have your wife help you, I'll spare you all the details, but help me in the bathroom, that's a very humbling place. And so I needed something to get my mind back in the right, like remind myself of who I was, right? And I think that's what Melanin Money is all about. It might look cool on a t-shirt, but it's to remind you of who you are. And you have to see yourself sometimes before you get there. Because I knew that I was going to get back, but I needed to see that. I needed a tangible representation of what that was going to look like. And so, some of the things that I put on the Melanin Money shirts were a reflection of that. But more importantly, it was just, I can't remember the specific affirmation, but it was more along the lines of just like, you are destined for greatness, and this is a blip on the radar, right? So it was probably much more eloquent than that, but it was just a matter of me knowing that this wasn't the end of my story, right? That I was going to bounce back, and that's why I'm so big on documenting my story. So I think maybe a couple months ago, I released a video, kind of highlighting my testimony to a degree, but if I didn't capture the vulnerable moments along the journey, the video wouldn't have been nearly as impactful, right? And so that's why it's important that regardless of where you're at, have enough confidence to remind yourself that this isn't the end game, right? Take that screenshot of the negative bank account, right? Take that screenshot of your belly hanging over your belly, right? Because number one, you want to have that proof that I knew this wasn't where my story ended, right? And a reminder of where you're going. And sometimes it's just a hard reminder, right? Because sometimes, motivation is a lot like bathing, right? Like it doesn't last, so you have to do it often. Yeah. And so sometimes you have to have that reminder, like, yo, I can't be sitting on my butt. I got stuff to do. Right? So like, it amazes me the amount of people that just like be twiddling their thumbs. Like, bro, like what more motivation do you need? You got a kid to feed. You got a mom. Here's what gets me, not to get on my soapbox. So in my neighborhood, they pick up our trash from our doorstep, right? And I don't care how you make money. Like every profession is respectable. But whenever I see a black woman who's about my mom's age or older, and she's doing that job, I'm saying she better not have a son. She better not have a son or a daughter nowhere sitting on their ass right now. You know what I'm saying? That's just how my mind works. So it's like everybody's looking for motivation and tweets and all that kind of stuff, and that's helpful. And that's why I created it, right? To create a little motivation. But sometimes you just gotta look yourself in the mirror. Yeah. Right? Literally and figuratively. And it's like, what do I want? Right? And even if you don't know exactly what you want, you don't want what you got. So anything that you do that's different than that is a chance that it's going to move you in the right direction. So stop waiting on the sign. The fact that you're looking for a sign is a sign. You know what I'm saying? So stop waiting on that. If you know where you're at is not where you want to be, just move, right? And be brutally honest with yourself about where you are so that you can make that move. Because sometimes what happens is people will be in a situation where like they'll get down on themselves for a minute, but then they forget and then they're back to doing the same BS, right? You got to remind yourself like, no, bro, I got stuff to do. People are depending on me. Who loses if you don't win?
Right, right.
This is good. I think so many times, right? Like we always talk, and you brought up stories. We always talk about what story are we currently writing. The question is always asked, where does your story begin? But my question is, where does your story end? What does the conclusion of your story look like?
Man, that's a That's a heck of a question. And being that I'm still writing it, it's hard to answer. But if I had to say, right, if I was known for anything, when my story ends, I think it looks like, man, George unlocked and unveiled. And notice how the language, be mindful of the language I'm using. Unveiled the potential that was lying dormant in me to change the trajectory of my family's legacy. That's what my story ends. And the reason why I say that is because, have y'all ever heard of the reticular activating system and what that is?
I don't think so.
No? It's a scientific fact, right? So, all right, the brain is hardwired to prevent you from going crazy. What I mean by that is the brain, technically, what it can do is it can be in tune with everything that's happening at all times, but if it did that, you would lose your mind, right? So all it does is once something becomes a part of your reality, at that point, it unveils it to you. Here's a prime example. When you got the car you have now, right?
Yeah.
Did you start seeing it a little more?
No, literally, we were just talking about that yesterday.
Right?
Yeah.
They were already on the road
Right.
before you got the car, right? But your brain is like, it's not relevant. It's not a part of his reality right now, right? Then once you got the car, it's part of his reality. Okay, let's expose him to it now. Let's reveal this because now it makes sense. So I say that to say that whoever you're supposed to be is already inside of you. And but this is now on a scientific level, because sometimes people say it on an esoteric level. This is a scientific fact, right? So my destiny, my goal is to help people unveil the things that are already there so that they can become who they were supposed to become, right? Because if they can do that, it goes back to what I just said, the quote about who loses if you don't win. There's so many people's destinies tied to you winning. Right, which is how I know why you're so big on your book, right? It's like those words are tied to unlocking something special inside of somebody, right? And so it's like my goal in life, again, not just through finance, but it's like helping people unveil those resources, those natural resources that they have, so that they can impact the world. Because if I can do that for, a few thousand people, I feel like I've done my job.
This is good.
It is good.
This is good. I think so many times people come on here and first they don't know what to expect, right? And you were even talking about that before. It's like, well, I don't know what I'm about to talk about.
Yeah.
But kind of a lot of times, man, we may lead conversations, but this podcast is also the ability for us to learn, right? Yeah. So I sit on the other side and I could just, take notes and just take things in. And I've been able to see the evolution from, George, when I first met you at the event, and then kind of seeing the growth, whether it's on social media or in business or in branding or just in general, like as a human being as well. And I'm thankful for that. But I guess my question, right, is you do a lot, like a lot. You're a husband, you're running multiple businesses. You are impacting thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people. When is the time in your life that you feel most relaxed and relieved on a personal sense?
Yeah. Actually, it's probably going to be a much more simpler answer than you guys probably. On my couch when I have opportunity to watch a show on Netflix. I do a lot. And so just having a moment with my wife, being able to, eat something that I enjoy and spending quality time with her is great. You know what I'm saying? It's super simple, but I'm a simple guy. And so just being able to do that, chill, relax on the couch, take a load off, that's when I feel most relaxed.
And you talk about taking a load off. What is one thing that in this season, in this current environment, in this, everything that's going on in the world, that you're trying to take a load off of in your life? A load off of my life. So I'm in this unique process of owning my businesses and not running them. Right. Because everybody wants to wear the CEO hat, but the true job of a CEO is to be a visionary, right? To have enough time to think about where the company needs to go, to make sure the infrastructure is sound enough so that if you want to sell it, you can sell it for a premium and a multiple. So for me, the biggest thing I'm trying to get off my shoulder this year is really anything of me doing one-to-one anything, right? Because my impact is supposed to be just much greater, right? And so it's like, even though the compensation associated with the work that I do is great,
I just need to be in a place where I'm truly, purely operating as a CEO, because when I can use my mind as my most important tool, I can move mountains. And so I'm really just trying to get out of any operational stuff, and just have the type of infrastructure that when George is not here, things can run seamlessly. And of course I have, things that I sell online and things like that are happening, but there's always still operational things behind the scenes that either from a team standpoint or a system standpoint that you have to make sure are in the right place in order to be automated or in order to completely remove yourself. And so I'm just really in the space of focusing on removing myself so that I can have more of myself. Again, not just to be, to do more, but to do less, right? To think, to read, to write.
No, literally. I think that's such a great perspective, right? Owning your businesses and not running them. And I think a lot of times we're focused on running, businesses, we're focusing on running towards goals. But I guess my question for you is, what is something that you recognize that you were running from that caught up with you?
That's a good question. Something that I was running from that caught up to me. I would have to say, don't let your success suffocate you, right? And I don't know if it's so much something that I was running from, but you know what? It was. So I come from a background of, like many, right? Humble upbringing, single parent household. A lot of my drive to get into the financial industry was lack of resources growing up. And something that I was running from was being broke. And so I got into the financial industry and learned about money because I was like, I never want to feel that way again. And I was running. And not that it caught up to me, but what I will say is that I had to realize that I actually had a scarcity mindset, right? Associated with my perception of money, right? Which is why I, wanted to hold on to it. I was so frugal, wanted to spend it. And it caught up to me because it was like, how are you going to help people if your hands are closed? So it was a realization. It was like, you got to let it go. You got to let this go. You have to believe that God is going to continue to open up the path for you, right? So that if you decide to let some go, give, right? Be a resource, that there is more for you. I had a scarcity mindset when it came to money. And it caught up to me when I thought that I was at a place where I was financially secure and still didn't feel so secure. And so just shifting my mindset to abundance and knowing that money and resources are limitless and that, I have the ability to get them at will.
We're going to go on a commercial.
Welcome back. We are here still with financial expert George Achaempong.
Yeah.
So we're going to switch it up a little bit, slightly. So there's a red box in the middle of the table. You may have noticed it.
I did.
There are questions in this box. If you could get the box, pick a question, read the question, and answer the question for us.
I'm pretty good at following directions.
I gave you a lot of them, right?
Step one. Pick the question and then read the question.
Yes.
This is like red table talk, but with the box kind of sort of. I'm sorry.
It is a red box.
All right, here's the question, guys. Do you believe that you're utilizing your gifts to the best of your ability? Great question. I would say no. And the reason why I would say no is because best is the highest standard, right? And the biggest room in the house is the room for improvement. So there's definitely some like,
I like that.
there's definitely some ways that I could be maximizing my gifts. I'm pretty organic in this. I'm not a perfectionist in the sense that I don't mind just hopping on stories and sharing some quick game. But the funny part about it, and this is probably gonna blow people's minds, especially people closest to me who see how hard I work. I'm probably only operating at 25%
Wow.
of my capacity.
That's low.
Yeah, 25%. There's so much more in the tank. And I'm not saying that I'm operating at 25% of my potential, because there's a difference, right? There's just more that I could do, and I just feel like there's a lot of room for opportunity, and I just want to lean into that, which is part of the reason why I want to create more space, just to do the things that matter most to me. Because sometimes in business, right, you have so many things, so many hats that you wear, right, as the leader, and so the more I can take those hats off, I'm wearing a lot of those hats, but all those hats aren't uniquely fitted for me, right? That's the reason why I'm saying I'm operating at 25%. I'm definitely doing a lot, right? But in terms of what I'm uniquely qualified to do, probably 25%. So if I lean into that at 100%, man, it's scary. It's scary to think about.
So like, what would that look like if you wanted to maximize 100%? Obviously, that means that you wouldn't be able to just do it by yourself. What other skills do you have that you feel like would better enable you to utilize the 100% without just relying on yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would just say having almost like a person or a team that can take the ideas and the content that I have and they can duplicate them into all the mediums that they need to be duplicated into, right? It's like, hey, so for example, if I'm just here, whether it's a mic, whether it's a camera, and I'm just doing my thing, and then there's a team of people who can, like, one person's gonna get the craziest videos, one person's gonna make this a podcast, one person's gonna make this micro clips. If I had that, I think I'd be in a good place. Yeah, because I have so much to give the world, and in so many different formats, and so I just need more help to amplify my voice.
I feel like this isn't a question, but one thing I appreciate most about you that I heard you say, and I think I shared this with you before, is it was like on a story or something, and you were like, I don't even care to give out, giving out my ideas. I really don't care because most of y'all are not going to execute them. And I was like, that is so true, because you could say so many ideas we just throw around all the time, and we know nobody's going to do anything, so it's fine. But that's not a question, but I just appreciate that.
And one thing I think would be dope too, and it's just people ain't got enough hustle. I would love a situation where someone had enough ambition, drive, tenacity, hunger, to where I'm like, yo, I want to do this business. I don't want to do the business. I'll put up the money, but I want to be in this business. Can you make it happen? And then we're business partners, right? I'm the capital partner, and they gonna make it happen. If I could find that, I think I would also be in a much better place. Like I'll stroke the check, just go do the deal, right?
Anybody listening, if you have an idea, you have the capital partner. You have the capital. So I want to transition really quickly because I think we don't talk about this enough. And the overall goal of the podcast is to kind of pull back the curtain, on the business. Everybody sees George the brand, George Mr. Finance, all of these different things. What is one thing that you would want people to know about you that you don't either A, post, market, or B, they just really just don't ask the question?
That's a good question. So one thing that I want people to know about me that I don't post or people don't think to ask the question. Man, this is business related or finance related?
Personally related.
Personally related.
So neither.
Neither. Oh, neither. Good point. That I don't mind following someone else's leadership, right? I was thrusted into leadership, right? And as a result of that, I became a great leader, and I like to lead. However, the reason why I invest in stocks is because I want the best CEOs in the world to work for me. That's what investing in stocks is. Right? That's good. The best CEOs in the world work for me. They do really well. I get paid. I'll be transparent. I'll log in right now and see what I made for the day, right? I don't mind being a part of someone else's vision, right? I have a huge vision, right? But I don't mind also at times saying, hey, look, George, I'm running this thing. I think you'd be a great asset in this capacity. If you had the capacity, would you do it? Yeah. Most people would just assume that I want to be the big dog. George ain't gonna want to do nothing with me unless he's the CEO, unless he's running the show. Not true, right? And that's because I'm confident enough in who I am and because I already got enough of my own stuff going on, right? So if there's opportunities for me to support someone who's crushing it, who's absolutely doing amazing things, and I can see the vision and they're a charismatic leader and they're a person that I can attach myself or my capital to, yeah, I'd love to do that. But most people just wouldn't think that. They would just think that I want to be the guy, and that's not true. I do that because I have to do it. And you'll see over the next 36 months, my firm, you'd be lucky to find me on the website. Melanin Money, I'm already not on the website. A personal brand is a leverage mechanism, right? It's not essential. And quite frankly, it's frowned upon to build anything that's scalable. If you go to any venture capitalist and say, hey, look, I want to sell my business in 5 years. And they look at your business and they're like, okay, Well, what happens if you're not there? I don't know. Oh, is it so like, are people showing up because you, like, your ego tells you that's a good thing? Like, oh, people showing up because it's me. That's a bad thing. Like, most small business owners, they're thinking about, they're so attached to their small business, right? It's like, oh, this is my baby. Oh, I created this out of whatever necessity. But if you're thinking like a true business boss, right, you got to be thinking about an exit. Even if you don't have the necessarily desire to leave the business per se, you need to be building it that way. Because if you're not building a business that you can exit from, you're probably not building a business that's going to be sustainable long term, because it's always relying upon you. And I know I'm probably deviating away from whatever the original point was. But yeah, the point of the matter is, I am okay being led by the right leader.
I think that's good. And you talked about exit strategy. What's yours?
Yeah, great question. So my exit strategy is to shift a couple things. So for Pocket Advisor, which is my financial social network, shout out Pocket Advisor.
Sponsor this podcast.
Yeah, you already know. So my goal for that is in the next 36 months to become a top 3 financial education platform, right? And it'll be a couple of pillars. Number 1, we will shift from education to software as a service. Because if you look at the categories of what has the highest multiples from an exit standpoint, SaaS is up there with the best of them. Education, probably 3x multiple. SaaS, you're looking at 12 to 13, right? So we switch from education to SaaS. We then make a huge play for B2B, right? So instead of going direct to consumer with our subscription model, we go to T-Mobiles of the world, the Amazons of the world, the Starbucks of the world. We say, hey, look, why are you giving people legal services as a part of their benefits when you're not giving them financial services as a part of their benefits, right? They're less likely to get in legal trouble if they have their finances together, right?
Literally.
So going after these corporations with no less than 10,000 seats to have a B2B arm of our service. The way we're going to do that is a grassroots effort called getyourjobtopayforit.com. So it'll be a campaign. And essentially, we'll use our B2C model to survey where they work. Hey, then once we get over a certain amount per employer, we just go back to that employer and say, hey, look, your employees already tapped in on this. Wow. You need to get us in the door. You know what I'm saying? And
that's a great idea.
Yeah. So that's an exit plan. So we'll get up to the goal is to get up to at least 10 to 15,000 direct to consumer, and 50,000 B2B, and then package it up and to be able to sell it for 9 figures.
Well,
that's a strategy.
That's it. So I guess, kind of just going back again, when you say things like that, there's somebody on the other side, there's somebody in the audience right now that's like, this doesn't make sense. Where do I start, George? I'm not, I don't have 6 figures. I don't have this, or, and we talked about champions checklist. We've talked about where you start and kind of just doing it and all of these different things. What would be your, I guess, quick and dirty strategy for someone that is a millennial business owner, that wants to transition, that wants to jump, but really doesn't have maybe the capital or the resources to be able to do so?
And when you say jump, you mean go full-time in what they're doing, or what do you mean?
Great question. So they're full-time entrepreneurs.
Okay.
They want to scale. They don't want to run their business. They want to own it and not run it.
Sure.
What would be your strategy for them to be able to get it ready?
Good question. So you want to think about it in three buckets, right? In your business, you have acquisition, which is getting the customer. You have activation, which is delivering on the promise. And then you have retention. And that's servicing them in a way that they keep coming back, right? And so the first thing you want to do, because everybody wants to scale first. First thing you want to do is you want to set up your systems, right? Because systems don't fail, people do. Yeah. Right? You want to set up your systems. Because if you scale and you don't have the right systems, you're going to break, right? So you want to ask yourself, anything that I'm doing currently, can it be delegated or can it be automated, right? And if it can't be automated, can it be done more efficiently? Those are questions you want to ask yourself every single day. Anytime you find yourself doing something. Because remember, if it's being done by you, then you're never going to be able to own the business. So every time you're doing anything, ask yourself, can it be delegated, automated, or can it be done more efficiently? All right, that's the first thing you want to do, is really make sure that those things are really dialed in, your systems. Then you want to make sure that you have the right processes in place, because systems without processes are useless, right? So you have the right systems, but it's like, okay, what are the repeatable, and duplicatable steps that I can transfer to someone else? How can I take it out of my brain, put it into paper, or put it into a system for standard operating procedures so that someone else can step right in and do this job, right? So I would work on that. Then once you have that, I would then try to find someone to replace yourself. It's actually kind of a systematic approach. So first thing you want to do is you want to remove yourself from, we'll call it fulfillment, right? So say you have a service-based business. You want to remove yourself from delivering on the promise, right? Because then you can be freed up to sell, right? Because if it's your business, you're probably really passionate about selling. You can talk about it all day long, right? You can get people to sign on the dotted line. The challenge then comes, the work that's associated with what right?
Exactly.
So then you remove yourself from fulfillment and you get into sales. Then the next step is to remove yourself from sales, right? And then you are just into management. It's like, okay, cool. I got somebody else who's on the phones, who's doing the funnels, doing whatever. And I just have to make sure that those things are happening the way they should, right? As long as with the fulfillment person. Then after you remove yourself from management, right, then you want to remove yourself from marketing. Because after management, you're probably at that point then like, okay, now I'm thinking of the strategy. What's the look, the feel? How are we going to get more people through the door? Because I have somebody who can take the calls now. But then eventually you want to remove yourself from marketing, right? And you get out of that. Then once you get yourself out of marketing, at that point you're just in CEO mode, right? Which is great. The visionary. How does all this make sense? Are we moving in the right direction? The infrastructure, the people, all that good stuff. And then last but not least, then you want to move to chairman. And that's where I'm trying to go, right? It's just literally the business is an asset. I'm on the board, I collect the check, and that's that, right? And that's the systematic way. So the quick and dirty, as Kyle asked, because I gave you the full scope. The quick and dirty is, what am I doing right now? And can it be delegated, automated, or done more efficiently? And document that, right? Think about everything that you hate doing, everything that you dislike doing. That's one untold thing about entrepreneurship. It's like, what's the stupidest thing that people say? If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Okay. So the reality is, let's take sports for example, right? It's like, okay, the only goal in the NBA is the championship. Everything else is what you have to do to get there. The 18 years that you have to play is part of the process. The 72 regular season games are part of the process. The playoff games are but you're only doing it for the championship, right? And so if we sat up there and said, well, that's all that mattered, then you're gonna hate the process. And so you gotta have self-awareness to know that, okay, there's certain things about this process I gotta embrace, but there's certain things I just don't want to do if I don't have to. I'm gonna pay somebody else for that. I'm gonna delegate that because also it has an intrinsic value. You ever done something and you felt like tired or sluggish after you did it?
Exactly.
Right. So imagine getting that off your plate. So when you document everything, the first things you want to get off your plate are the things that put a drag on your energy,
right?
Because it's going to give you more space to do what you do even better. I hope that's quick and
No, that's definitely solid. And I think, this conversation has been so riveting because we didn't just talk about business, right? We talked about self-awareness. We talked about, kind of just integrity, just getting yourself together, aligning your vision with your actual actions as well, and the behaviors and habits so that it can be made easy for you, right? So it can be made easy. And I think that's what's really helped me individually is, I see this person that I want to be, but what are their responsibilities, and are they actually responsible for their behaviors? Are they acting accordingly to what that looks like, and vice versa? And I think that's what's helped me advance everything. And one of the quotes that I live by now is, better people run better businesses. Better people write better books. Better people, I feel like have more influence as well. So I guess my final question is, what is, questions they're pivotal to life. And I think that we got to stop living the answer and start living the question. What is one question that you're asking yourself right now, like today or, frequently, that you haven't found the answer to yet?
Great question. Pun intended. A question that I've asked myself, or that I find myself asking, I haven't found the answer to yet. I would have to say, when is enough what does enough look like? What does enough look like, right? And when you look at people like Warren Buffett or Diddy or Jay, shout out Jay, big power moves past couple months. When you look at people like that, it's obviously not about the money, right? Because 20 years, 30, 50 years ago for Warren Buffett, they were financially secure.
Very.
Right? So for me, it's asking myself, what does enough look like, right? When am I at a point where I can truly say this chapter of my life, when it comes to the financial part and focusing on the money and the growth and all that, like when is enough, right? And because objectively, like I said, enough is enough because I technically already came, right? From a fundamental standpoint. So it's like asking myself and making sure that I never get out of alignment about the qualitative metrics of what mattered most, right? So, how do I define happiness? How do I define freedom? How do I define legacy? How do I define wealth? And never like losing sight of the qualitative aspects of my life. Because if I do, then I'll never be able to find an anchor or a hook to just say, hey, like, just live.
Yeah.
Right. It's fine. Just live your life now. Right. Or you are doing this. You just happen to be making money from it, but it truly is rooted in pure fulfillment, And so just always making sure that I'm asking myself that question. So I'm never out of alignment.
That's good. That's good. And, when you think about everybody listening to this, because you're continuing to, operating your gifts and you're a vessel for so many different people. What would be your final message if today was, your last day? If this was your last message, what would be that message that you live?
Man, y'all come with them today. Y'all come with them. Very, very reflective. I like the questions, though. It makes you think. My last message, man. Whew. I would have to say who you are is enough if you're willing to give it all you got. If you're willing to give it all, because it's going to take everything you got, but you already have everything you need.
This was good.
Enough said.
Enough said. Enough said. Yo, this was amazing, and I thank you for even being here, and the energy in here has been amazing. I was taking more notes than providing more questions, which is dope. But 4 things that you said that I want to end with is freedom, happiness, wealth, and legacy. What more is there to life? Right. Freedom, happiness, wealth, and legacy. We're here with the #1 financial advisor, the guru, the Don Perignon.
I'll take it, man.
And I'm just thankful. I'm thankful. So, we're here. And I got, I do have one more question.
Sure. And before you ask that, can I touch on that real quick?
For sure.
4 points. The reason why it's important to have those as a measuring stick is because what we'll find is that oftentimes you have this target in your head, right? Like of how much money you need, blah, blah, blah. But then if I were just to ask you, what does happiness look like? Truly, you might, I like spending time with my son. We like going to get ice cream. We like doing this. What you'll find is that most of what you're defining your happiness by or freedom by are things you can do right now.
Exactly.
Money is just a magnifier. It's just going to increase the spectrum, right? So it's like, I like to travel. Okay, you can go to Asheville for a few $100, right? So you can still do all those things. Money just becomes the magnifier, or it moves the spectrum of maybe how much of that you can do. But you can still do all that right now. And so one of the things that we do in our financial planning process is, we'll go through the cash flow, we'll go through the budget, but we're asking them this month, from your this makes me happy list, what did you do? From your freedom, what did you do? Because those are things that we can do right now. And it goes back to the beginning of the conversation about those ingredients in the recipe, right? It's like, if you're doing those things now, which you can, and stop putting off this esoteric long-term target, you'll realize that you'll be able to bring that present into the future. And that's one of the most important things that my work is designed to do, is to bring the future pain into the present. The reason why people don't save money or invest for the long term is because they think it's so far away.
Yeah.
Oh, well, retirement. What is that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when I can bring that, and I hate to use the word pain, but when I can bring that future pain or pleasure into the present, it makes it a lot easier to latch on to, And so that's what I encourage everybody to do. Like, if you have this long-term target, what about that target can you extract as something you can do right now, so that you can get there faster and experience more of it in real time.
This is good.
Where can people, to your question now.
Yeah, where can people find you online?
Yeah, I'm probably most active on Instagram. You can find me at George Achaempong Jr. Please put it in the show notes because my last name
I got
is
you.
pretty long. Or you can go to my website, georgeachaempong.com, where you can kind of just be a springboard to everything that I do. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Man, we appreciate you so much, George. My brother, my guy, my mentor. This is Around the Way podcast. We'll see you guys next episode.
Bye, guys.
Peace.